Hey, greetings everyone. It is I, of course, here to talk about Wotv and a batch update. Now, we talked recently about the previous MA2s, so I'm not including those in this video. And we're only going to look at the characters who have been taken up to 140. And today we're starting with the highlight, which is Aileen, because we actually have a little bit of extra footage to show off today. So Eileen's a spear character who has been around for a really, really long time in Wotv, and I don't think that she's ever really found her groove because of low agility and the fact that there's just better characters out there. So long and short of it is Eileen's had a bunch of times where people have tried to make her work. The Church of Aileen does exist out there. I recognize you. And yeah, I wanted to do a Mad Max thing, but no. Anyway, there are some fans out there of her. So, you know what? Is she good enough? Well, taking a look at her upgrade, that's not that. That's a little bit of a spoiler for later. Dream ability is a 20% agility increase boost, defense penetration of 20 with a upgrade to 1 of her skills for job level 25, which single target resistance stays the same for 3 turns. Mod actually changes a little bit here, but the mod increases by 125% if multiple targets are in range. At least that's the way I remember reading this ability. And with piercing damage, it's a hell of a strong ability, to be sure. This is a definitive strong ability. So, is Aileen worth it? Well, it's a good question to be asked, and one that I don't think is the thing people got to remember is that 140s are really, you have to spend money to do a ton of 140s, and even then it's a mass amount of job points, resources. Like a lot of the times it's like, oh, this would be interesting kind of thing, right? So let's do it, let's try it. But unless you're spending money, it's just really limited about how many of these characters you can upgrade, and choosing a bad one can feel really bad. Peachin, of course, someone I reference on this channel constantly, did upgrade Rob to a 140 recently and found his performance to be really not satisfactory. So Aileen here, as you can see in this team, I mean, you're not really saving that much in terms of like cost for cost limited events. I mean, really, you're putting a 70 cost character instead of Queen Macherie, who is already really good in this spot with this team, and hoping that Aileen will do more than her, which is an interesting theory, right? Then you take into account the fact that you have 2 limited 100 cost characters and, you know, a 90 cost VC and a limited cost knock discard, and it's a pretty expensive party. So just running through here really quickly without audio, because we don't want audio very quick, and we're just gonna up the speed on it a little bit. This is a powerful character. 20% agility increase on Aileen is a lot. It's a lot of damage or a lot of extra speed to facilitate her damage better. So she can deal, like, as you can see here, about 10,000 to a Queen Macherie as well as a King Bradley. And those numbers are really strong if it works out in the way that you want it to. I mean, it's not a very flexible ranged ability, so it always can seem like, I think the performance of this is incredibly situational. But I mean, that piercing ability with a 300% mod is absolutely massive when you're stacking damage and just doing piercing as well. So it's really good. And Peachin tested in a bunch of videos, and one of the things that I think was one of my definitive deciders about this was the fact that, well, it really matters about Dialdo, strangely enough, because like as soon as Dialdo dies, Aileen is very quick to die after that. And the chances of this Earth Elemental team winning in the long run goes down considerably. Now, I'm not to say that it isn't strong kind of thing, because here you can see it won against Ice Range, which I remember from last week's testing, Ice Range wasn't particularly that great against it anyway. Here it is against the Lightning, which I feel is, a matchup it should win against. Here is kind of a weird matchup that some people are using, which is King Bradley, Alphonse, and Green, which is kind of a strike-based team, but not exactly. And even then, it's kind of questionable about how this is set up. But sure, okay. But yeah, Earth right now can seem kind of in a weird position to me of it being like, sometimes it looks really, really strong, and other times like this, it looks incredibly weak against a really multiple facet party kind of thing. So is Aileen worth it? For most people, the answer is no. And the big reason is because resources are way too limited to cast on a character like this. You can, again, just see that her speed has been massively improved. 20% speed is a big increase to almost 10,000 HP and 1,700 attack. Is really good. But is it better than Queen Macherie? And is this helping you at all with limited? It feels so in the middle. And again, one of the things that you're hoping to use here is an incredibly high-powered ability with very narrow range. So I don't think it's worth it, but it is a heck of an improvement to make some people happy and make their memes dream. So I've spent a lot of time talking about Aileen specifically because we have a little bit of extra window into her ability. Now we're going to go through a little bit faster talking about the rest of the characters. All right, starting off with Lilith, a fire elemental character who would now either have to be on a physical evasion team or a magical team to fit into most fire comps. All attack resistance up by 25% and AP skill. Job level 25 now increases her slack attack resistance penetration by 40 for 3 turns, and a decent range on it too. I think it's fine. I think it's okay. 40 AP decrease is pretty good, and you are looking at a limited cost character here. 60 cost is not as limited, so overall I don't feel like it's worth it, but again, let someone else try and figure out if it's broken or not, because resources are a little more, again, narrow for MRs. Not as much, but anyway. Sosha is next, and Sosha I actually quite love her design since the very beginning of the game. I think that she absolutely looks like one of the best Dragoon, the coolest Dragoon ever. But talking about Sosha, her spirit goes up by another 30, which if you're keeping track at home, her spirit is incredibly high. She is capable now of reaching a 100 spirit stat, which is very memey. So what else did she get? A little bit of agility and 1 ability upgrade. And that ability upgrade is not her job level 25, which breaks physical barriers. I do believe it's this one. Grand Protect. Let me just double check. I totally blanked on the kanji. Yes, it is. So it is her Dragoon upgrade, and looking at what we're getting here, guaranteed to hit for 3 turns if you have Protect active, which is quite interesting. It makes her entire kit overall better. She's getting reaction block on it, she's getting Protect, and she's getting more spirit. It's a really interesting upgrade, and SRs are incredibly cheap. I think that Sosha is absolutely a very strong consideration here for a low tier to go up to 120, because she actually has a lot of stuff now in her kit. Dragoon isn't particularly the best, but even that you can potentially throw this onto her ranger abilities to have sure hit, and she has some high modifiers in there. I think there's enough here and these characters are low enough cost that this is interesting and definitely a plausible upgrade for some people. Next up, Severo, and Severo is getting a magic increase of 15% and a spirit penetration of 50%, which is a hell of a lot. I don't really think I need to explain that. That is just insane. Now he also gets his job level 25, decreases non-skill activation time, skill activation time, grants haste for 5 turns for himself, and ignores fatal damage. You know what? A glass cannon is really interesting when they can glass cannon and not worry about dying. So if you have, something maybe like Red Mage here where you're dishing out potentially good numbers off of attacks, and he has gotten upgraded even in his main job to having like large AoEs that decrease bravery. I'm going to go ahead and say that Severo is another strong contender for a really cheap, incredibly high build, and it's not like this is an impossibility to imagine a really strong team for him. Since Severo only costs 40, if you were to also throw in Amnelis, who is a 120, a 100 cost unit, 120 unit, please, no. And then you throw in someone like Celeste, maybe, or Aerith. I have to say, it's a really, really strong looking water magic composition when it doesn't feel like there are that many teams that are as focused on magic, and Amnelis supports the team quite well. Celeste is very tanky. I really am strongly considering building Severo and Sosha just for my own account, since the cost is so low. Alright, next up, Liart, and everybody's favorite shop owner. Initial AP plus 20, missile attack resistance penetration of 40, which is a pretty high amount, and now she's also getting a mod increase on one of her job level 25, which has a chance to inflict stop. I think Liart is fine. Again, the cost is so low to raise this character that I don't think it is really that much of a burden. For like units that you would put this with, I don't know, Niv maybe, Cloud, and eventually when Lightning gets her 140, there's a really strong ranged Lightning physical team here that is actually incredibly low cost if we're just looking at it from that perspective. So I think it's quite interesting, the art, but I'm not 100% sure if her damage can get there without the vision cards, so keep that in mind. Next up, Kilf. UR gets defense increase, a 200% magic chance attack, and last but not least, her job level 25, which increases Earth attack the same amount, decreases AP consumption the same amount, restores 30% of damage done for 3 turns, increases defense by 20, and also increases spirit penetration by 40. A really good upgrade here, and unlike Aileen, I think if you're looking for an older character, I like Kilf in the combination with Dialdo and Queen Mashari better. There's a lot of synergy in that team, both in elemental vision cards and in defensive vision cards, without having to worry too much about job VCs. I think Kilf is the one I recommend more between the two URs, but I think there's just better synergy with what Earth is currently doing there, preemptively. Next up, Ruin Stern, and Stern has been actually like a long time now. This character is just still featured in Dark Elemental teams, and reaction block rate of 30, slash attack by 10, and I do believe it is barrier skill that gets it. So job level 25, break the physical barrier, 165 mod with an increased hit chance. It's fine. I mean, like dealing with 100% like sure hit like miss abilities, sure, this is actually pretty good, and it's on a break physical barrier anyway, so it has a chance of getting rid of something that would decrease his damage. I think that this is the most okay upgrade because it's completely competent, it's completely fine in his kit and what his job is. It's not incredibly exciting, it's just fine, and that's the thing. Like with him, he's still being used currently in Dark Elemental parties to some good success. So does he really need that big of an upgrade? But I think that will make him fall out maybe a little bit faster. So careful with where you spend your resources. And last but not least, Reyes, a water shooter who gets critical rate increase and AoE resistance for herself. That critical rate increase is important for her kit, and she has a pretty high chance of scoring crits now. Her ability that gets it is this one, her double hit attack, which honestly is a pretty good ability to get upgraded because you're getting, a little bit of a chain going potentially. Increases critical damage by 40% now for 3 turns. I mean, it's still a 139 mod, it's still decreasing defense, and it's still decreasing AP consumption for 1 turn when performing a critical hit. So overall now, I do think that this that Reyes is just a even more synergistic kit than she was before, and the limited cost characters always end up being just way stronger considerations because they're just, I mean, without spending money and having a ton of job points to upgrade these characters anyway, you just can't do it. I mean, URs are so expensive, so the 140 system is really way better for lower cost characters. So here's my general thoughts. First of all, Aileen is on the watch list, mainly because Aileen, I think, is really interesting. Like, she has a ton of damage and her speed is better now, but I'm not convinced that it is competitive enough out there to really be worthy of the incredibly limited resources. But again, there's something there. So people who love Aileen, this is pretty good news for you. Lilith, I think, is okay, but I'm not convinced that there's anything there right now. Sosha, Severo, and Reyes and Liart are my best of this entire batch, because honestly, there's some interesting and exciting stuff. Sosha getting 100% hit accuracy on all of her abilities and being so low costed allows her to work with Joom and Fly Glassy for limited events really well together. As for Severo, I think Severo is right at home on a water magic team and will do right well. Reyes is for the water physical team, and Liart is for a lightning range team. All wonderful limited cost characters here that won't break the bank and are way easier to 140 and max reincarnation even. So that's a thumbs up. As for Kilf and Ruinstern, I think Kilf is the better of the two, just from my preferences and how I know Dialdo works. I think that Earth magical age defensive team thinks it looks a little bit stronger from a distance to me, but I could be wrong. Ruinstern, I think, is just totally competent, and you know what? That's good, but it's also a little boring and not too terribly much to talk about. So there you go. That is the newest batch of characters for JP. Of course, coming up, we have the global will be starting in this wonderful system very shortly, and you guys should go back and check out all my other videos. Although I might need to do a little bit of an updated video, just updating my thoughts on certain things. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you're wanting to hang out tonight on stream, I will be streaming Resident Evil 4, the demo, and probably some other stuff because it's not that long of a demo.